The year is 2026. For the last few years, we've treated artificial intelligence like a shiny new tool in the shed, a way to write emails faster or code with less friction. The honeymoon is over though, and it's a cliched line because we've read it and heard it so many times in so many presentations and seen it in a lot of news articles. And we can say that the great integration has begun because we're no longer talking about if AI will change your business. And we've had a couple of episodes that certainly dive into how it will change your business. We're talking about whether your business model and your leadership style is even compatible with this new reality that we are embracing and we are creating together. The leaders who are winning today, they aren't just the ones who bought the most GPUs. They are the ones who realize that an AI-driven world actually demands more from the human spirit and not less. It demands a shift from extraction to regeneration, from silos to systems, and from efficiency at all costs to resilience by design. And today we're breaking down the roadmap, I'd say for possibly the next 24 months. So we're going to move past all of the hype into the hard architecture of the future. How do you lead when the machines are doing the thinking? They're doing more of it. But only humans can provide the soul. So before we dive in, don't forget to become part of our journey. Convergence is on track to become bigger, to be better, and we can only do it with your support. And we want you to be part of this journey. Faisal, you're still into it.
I'm still into it.
We spoke about the high-speed 2026 environment and we're going to go into more detail. But before, people like to understand who we are. So let's get a little bit into the personality. How do you spend the first hour of your day?
I try to meditate and take time for myself. I try to do the same thing when I go to sleep. And this is to kind of rebalance all the chaos that's going to break out rest of the day. Just to prepare, not rebalance, but balancing myself to prepare for the chaos that's going to come going forward. I wasn't always like this, right? So because I was like this typical, running from things to things, but I'm much more productive than I've ever been in my life because of that balance and allocating time.
So balance comes through. So balance equates productivity.
For me, absolutely.
I do meditate, so. But mine is more faster or code with less friction. The honeymoon is over though, and it's a cliched line because we've read it and heard it so many times in the sense of I like to release all of the craziness, to release and switch off my mind. If we talk about regeneration, it's regenerative elements of you and I that we embrace in our own lifestyle. If we look at it from a leadership perspective, and again, we have touched upon it slightly, but not in depth, this is something that you personally feel is important going into 2026 for leaders from a leadership perspective. How do regenerative leadership principles differ from traditional models that we're familiar with?
Sure. Look, sustainability, regenerative, these words has been around forever, right? And we mostly talked about those things in the context of preservation of the planet, the ecosystem, the climate, etc., etc. What is happening now because of AI, and this is actually not much talked about, if we keep going at this without really paying much diligent thought process, we've been talking about digital divide for a while now, right? But we're going to create an economic divide, and we're going to create an environment where we're going to be personally handing over our freedom to machines, right? A regenerative leader thinks about people first. That's really the point, before anything else, right? Human first. That means that every decision you make, we're talking about boundaries and restraining, right? And, that philosophy is what next generation leadership should. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Because it will destroy you.
Of course. And I see definitely the value where leaders are encouraged to move beyond the extractive models that only focus on the short term.
Yeah.
But you have the possibility to adopt what you're highlighting as these regenerative principles.
Yeah.
But one thing that I see motioning in a counter direction, and it actually comes from last week we were at the World Economic Forum. We heard in various conversations the direction that the world is going in, and this is very much an opposite direction. If you look alone, and one of the statistics that I took away that was confirmation, because I know being a practitioner as well, that to build a foundational model, you need about 1 billion cash up front to build a proper foundational model. And also we're in an era where you have huge reliance on data intensity, infrastructure intensity, capital intensity. I then question, is it really possible in 26? And obviously we're positioning it as an importance. And importance is sometimes a subjective wish, but is it possible that leaders can change to become embracive of this regenerative leader approach?
Look, you have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a really, it's a collective, look, whatever happens to the planet, it's the result of the collective behavior, right? But to your point, different leaders have different opportunity and different responsibility and a lot of constraint, right? So to your point, because it takes $1 billion to build a foundational model, so 7, 8 top vendors own that now,
Yeah.
right? The bigger you are, the more powerful you are. And I mean, most of us actually have no say in it. So what happens in that scenario? What happens in that scenario is that those 8 or 9 top vendor and the leaders of those vendor organization is going to be not solely, but hugely responsible where the world goes. And
We've not seen this responsibility, and I don't want to go into a rant about X and Elon Musk, but we've not seen this responsibility. And one thing that I did favor that we saw recently in America is a prominent celebrity, Paris Hilton, who was speaking up against that and supporting the Defiance Act,
sure.
because it's not okay to build a foundational model that does not have guardrails, that does not support the vulnerable, that does not support children, that does not support the important elements of what technology should not develop into.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to take this in a negative tangent in the sense that because we are encouraging the necessity for this regenerative leadership, but there's so many signals that require the acknowledgement and the recognition that change has to happen at the moment before it's too late.
So there's easy, which is not easy to execute, but we can all decide that we're not going to use any of this model. That's a choice, right? And if you do that, then those vendors are not going to have any customer. So we are equally part of the problem, not equally, but we are part of the problem because we're all using this, right? Unlike the climate change and unlike any other crisis we have seen, this probably is one of the most dangerous that we can probably encounter, right? It's like, imagine everybody having a nuclear warhead in your backyard, right? As we can because there's a regulation around it, right? But we don't have that for AI. So it's like a combination of corporation, government, and individual responsibility. What we do, what we don't do, what we use, and so on and so forth. But it's a very complex conversation. If you are a business leader or if you are a leader of any organization, you should be restraining yourself and thinking about the human impact. Human impact in terms of, what model you're using, why you're using it, how that impacts the environment, because we're building bigger and bigger data center. All that is interconnected, right? So there's an ecosystem impact that most people actually don't think about.
And this relates to two elements, and it's two elements that you also highlight in what is required in a positive strategical alignment for 2026 and what organizations should prepare themselves for. Learning culture. And also fostering a culture of psychological safety. So learning culture comes down to the basic requirement, and this is not only B2C in examples that we're talking about, but B2B. It is about this cultural shift that's necessary in an organization to really foster the experimental element that's necessary in innovation and research that powers innovation, but also making sure that there is iterative learning around what exactly is happening, why should you be informed, how can you inform yourself, and this is all very difficult. I mean, there's so many opportunities when tools are introduced, systems are introduced, where we're relying upon individuals that are responsible for change management or digitalization initiatives. And I think that they need to push a little bit harder to make sure that there is this honest recognition around we really have to enable a learning culture.
Yeah.
And also this psychological safety where employees have space to experiment, to fail.
Also, look at that example of what is it called, Gork. I mean, and generating images, right? It only got stopped because many people spoke out. We're going to put by the paywall. That's not good enough.
No, it's not good.
So employees has to be feeling, they have to have that safety whereby they don't get punished for speaking out.
Who's responsible for that though as well?
Well, that's a very cultural thing, right? So, I mean, and the culture starts with the man or a woman who's top of the org chart. If I was in charge of Gore, there's no way in hell I would allow that to happen.
Do you think that sometimes culture's an afterthought in organizations? And do you think that larger organizations consciously work on culture creation, or is something that just comes organically? Do you build the culture or is a culture organically played?
I think that you set a tone and then you have to practice to maintain that culture just like anything else, right? Because you forget why you started, what you started. You forget what was your core value. I mean, you can do this experimentation. You can go around and ask, what do we stand for? What are we trying to build? Who do we serve? Who do we service, right? Who and why do we do this, right? And how do we value each other's contribution? And you're probably going to get thousands of different answers. That tells you there's not a common understanding of the purpose and the value, which is the foundation of the culture, right? If you don't understand the purpose and the value, you cannot create a practice that makes up that organization. Right? So it requires practice, and it requires constant communication and reinforcement of that message to keep it together.
And also more of this like systems thinking approach, like this cultivation systems thinking, because it is not only the technology that's integrated from the AI integrated perspective, but as you're talking about, there has to be this interconnection where decisions are made, communicated, that there's this constant support of positive cultural development around the change that is happening because of.
Yeah, look, I mean, one of the elements of a good culture is that we're not just a learning organization, but we're highly collaborative, right? Okay.
Because of.
Yeah, look, I mean,
technology.
One of the elements of a good culture is that we're not just a learning organization, but we're highly collaborative, right? Okay, what does that mean? Is there a formal process of collaboration, or is it ad hoc, where you just met your colleague in the water cooler, and stroke up a conversation and go at it? So formal collaboration happens when you have a actual management system in place where you are collecting the ideas from rank and files, and the rank and file has a transparency how that idea fits into the overall strategy of the organization, right? So that and that creates that repeatable process of collaboration, and that collaboration is transparent, right? So, and why that's important is because if you had a core value and you have a core purpose, you can see how your collaborative process moving that core value and purpose.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, then you cannot do that, right? So then that's why it starts derail. Then that's where it gets started to derail. But it's also all the misalignment starts happening, right? A group one doesn't know what the group two does,
Yeah.
and et cetera, et cetera.
It's the complete misalignment.
Right.
It really is. So before we end this, it's a complete misalignment.
Right.
It really is. So before we end this, we're going to go full circle on this episode. Sometimes there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of digital noise. And again, it's like this systems thinking almost in your own heads becomes overwhelming. What's the one hobby that really grounds you back to the physical world? So,
I think it's when I go outside, because I'm very lucky to have a Japanese garden outside of in my home, and I have a Japanese hot tub, and so I try to go there almost every morning, which is not possible for I'm traveling or whatever. That's me connecting with the universe, if I can use that term word. And it has nothing to do with or technology or anything. It's really like connecting with art. And it's really connecting with the universe and connecting with the power that you don't understand, right? It's an energy and the feelings that are unexplainable, but it exists, right? That's kind of my way of grounding that. And then we really don't need much. We're such a small, because I'm a big.
I call it a big system.
Oh.
That is.
And what do you do?
There's a lot of things I do that have changed over the years. But one thing that I found more grounding in is just watching my child. I think that it's trying to look at the world from a different perspective.
Sure.
And learning not to care as much.
Yeah.
So thank you for being in Zurich once again. And thanks
pleasure.
everyone who listened and joined this particular episode and journey with us. Thank you.
Thanks for the great conversation.
Thank you.
I think it's when I go outside, because I'm very lucky to have a Japanese garden outside of my, in my home, and I have a Japanese hot tub, and so I try to go there almost every morning, which is not possible because I'm traveling or whatever. That's me connecting with the universe, if I can use that term word, and it has nothing to do with AI or technology or anything. It's really like connecting with art. And that is really connecting with the universe and connecting with the power that you don't understand, right? It's energy and the feelings that are unexplainable, but it exists, right? So that's kind of my way of grounding that. And then we really don't mean much because we're such a small particle in a big system.
A big system.
Oh.
Nice.
And what do you do?
There's a lot of things I do that have changed over the years, but one thing that I find more grounding in is just watching my child. I think that it's trying to look at the world from a different perspective.
Sure.
And learning not to care as much.
Yeah.
So thank you for being in Zurich once again.
Yeah,
and
my
thanks to
pleasure.
everyone who's listened and joined this particular episode and journey with us. Thank you.
Thanks for the great conversation.
Thank you.